I still remember the metallic taste of blood in my mouth that morning. The way the cold tile pressed against my cheek as I lay there on the kitchen floor watching coffee spread across the white grout like dark veins. My phone buzzed somewhere near my hand, the screen still showing that appointment I would never make. 1130 AM. Dr. Mitchell. Biopsy. The words blurred as my vision swam, but I could still see Dylan standing over me, his fists still clenched, his face twisted with that same contempt I had seen 1,000 times before. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I died and was reborn. But before I tell you how I burned their entire world to the ground, before I tell you about the FBI agents and the handcuffs and the courtroom where my father collapsed like a puppet with cut strings, I need you to understand something. I need you to know that I am not the villain of this story. I am not the one who stole. I am not the one who lied. I am not the one who chose a baseball scholarship over a daughter's life. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have ever been the one expected to sacrifice everything while someone else gets everything, if you have ever wondered what it feels like to finally say enough, then stay with me. Hit that like button, subscribe to hear the rest, and drop a comment telling me if you would have done what I did. Because what happened next they never saw coming. Let me take you back to the beginning. Back to before the blood and the courtroom and the empty house with the sold sign. Back to when I still believed that love was supposed to hurt. I was 27 years old and I had been dying for 5 years slowly in a house in Littleton, Colorado, that had 5 bedrooms but no room for me. The house had high ceilings and granite countertops and a batting cage in the backyard that cost more than most people's cars. It had a trophy room with glass shelves that caught the afternoon light and made everything inside shine like treasure. Those shelves held the future, my parents said. The future had a name, and it was Dylan. Dylan was 18, 6'2", with shoulders like a linebacker and a fastball that hit 94 miles per hour on a good day. He was their golden child, their lottery ticket, their retirement plan wrapped in a baseball uniform. And I was the support staff. I had noticed the lump in my neck 3 years earlier. It started small, barely a bump, something I could cover with my hair or ignore when I looked in the mirror. But it grew. Slowly at first, then faster, until I could not swallow without feeling. It could not turn my head without awareness of this foreign thing living in my throat. I had mentioned it at dinner once 2 years ago, and my mother had barely looked up from cutting Dylan's steak. "You are always dramatic, Landry," she had said, her knife scraping against the plate. "If it was serious, you would have dealt with it by now." My father had not even responded. He was showing Dylan something on his phone, some video of a pitcher's mechanics, their heads bent together, in that way that made me feel like a ghost at my own table. So I waited. I worked my job as an administrative assistant at a small law firm downtown. I came home, I made dinner for a family that barely acknowledged I was eating with them, and I felt the lump grow. I felt it every morning when I brushed my teeth. I felt it every night when I lay in bed and wondered if this was the thing that would finally make them see me. The appointment with Dr. Sarah Mitchell had taken 4 months to arrange. 4 months of phone calls to insurance companies, of scraping together copays, of finally getting a referral to a specialist at UHealth Oncology. The word oncology had made my hands shake when I wrote it in my planner. Cancer. The word I had been afraid to think now, printed in neat letters next to a date and time. November 12th, 1130 AM. I had not told my family about the appointment. Why would I? They had made it clear that my body, my health, my entire existence was secondary to Dylan's schedule. And Dylan's schedule was everything. That morning I woke up at 6. I made coffee in the quiet dark of the kitchen, standing at the island where I would later fall. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of my father snoring from their bedroom down the hall. I looked at my phone at that appointment at the address I had already programmed into my GPS. I had packed my insurance cards the night before. I had written down questions to ask the doctor on a notepad that I kept in my purse. I had done everything right, everything careful, everything quiet, so that no one would notice I was taking one morning, just one morning, for myself. Dylan's door slammed open at 7:15. I heard him thundering down the stairs, his footsteps heavy and entitled, the sound of someone who had never been told to be quiet or considerate or aware that other people existed. He exploded into the kitchen like a storm gym bag slung over one shoulder, phone in his hand, that look on his face that I had learned meant he wanted something, and he wanted it now. "Landry," he barked, not even looking at me. "Keys. I need the car. Flight's at 10, I need to be at the airport by 8. Let's go." I set my coffee cup down slowly. My hands were steady. That surprised me. No, I said. My voice was quiet but clear. I have an appointment this morning. He stopped. Actually stopped and looked at me like I had just spoken a foreign language. Would I have a doctor's appointment? I repeated. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat right where the lump pressed against my windpipe. I cannot drive you. For a moment I thought he might actually hear me. I thought I saw something flicker across his face, some tiny acknowledgement that I was a person with needs and plans and a body that was trying to tell me something was very, very wrong. Then he laughed. It was not a kind laugh. A doctor's appointment. For that stupid lump you have been whining about for like a year. Landry, you are fine. You have had that thing forever and you are still alive, right? So clearly it is not a big deal. Reschedule. I cannot reschedule, I said, and I heard my voice rising despite myself. Dylan, this is a biopsy. They need to check if it is cancer. I have been waiting 4 months for this appointment. He stepped closer. I could smell his cologne, expensive stuff my mother bought him, the kind that came in heavy glass bottles and cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I don't care, he said, and his voice dropped to that dangerous quiet that I knew meant he was done pretending to be reasonable. This is Perfect Game National. Do you understand what that means? There are going to be scouts from every MLB team there. Division I coaches. This is my future, Landry. This is everything. And you are going to let me miss it because of some appointment you can literally do any other day. I cannot do it any other day, I said. My hands were shaking now. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. Dylan, please. This is important. This is my health, your health. He laughed again, that same cruel sound. You have been fine for years. You are just being dramatic like you always are. You just want attention. God, you are so pathetic. Do you know that? Always making everything about you when real things are happening. When important things are happening. My health is important, I whispered, but even as I said it, I could feel the old familiar weight settling over me, the weight that said he was right, that I was being selfish, that my body and my fear and my 4-month wait were nothing compared to his baseball game. Cancel it, he said. It was not a request. Cancel it right now. Call them. Tell them you are sick or whatever. I need to be at that airport in 45 minutes and you are driving me. No, I said again, and this time my voice broke. No, Dylan. I am not canceling. I am going to my appointment. You can find another ride. I watched his face change. It was like watching a mask crack and something ugly pour through. His jaw clenched. His eyes went dark. You selfish bitch, he said, and I barely had time to register the words before his hand was moving. The slap was not like in movies. It was not dramatic or slow motion or cinematic. It was fast and sharp and so hard that my head snapped to the side and I lost my balance. I felt my hip hit the edge of the island, felt my knee buckle, felt myself falling. The tile was cold and hard and I tasted blood immediately, copper and salt flooding my mouth where my teeth had cut the inside of my cheek. The coffee cup had fallen with me. I watched the dark liquid spread across the white floor, watched it pool around my hand, watched the steam rise. My phone had skidded away and I could see the screen still bright, still showing that appointment. 1130 AM. Dr. Mitchell. The numbers blurred as my eyes filled with tears that I refused to let fall. Get up, Dylan said from somewhere above me. His voice was flat now, empty of emotion. Stop being so dramatic. You barely touched the counter. I heard footsteps. 2 sets. I knew those footsteps the way you know the sound of your own breathing. My parents. They were coming down the hall, probably drawn by the noise, probably ready to ask what was wrong. For just a second, lying there on the floor with blood in my mouth and my head ringing and my body aching, I let myself hope. I let myself imagine my mother rushing over, helping me up, asking if I was okay. I let myself imagine my father demanding to know what had happened, standing between me and Dylan, choosing me just once. My mother stepped into the kitchen first. She looked at me on the floor. She looked at Dylan standing over me. She looked at the spilled coffee and the phone and the blood I could feel beginning to drip from my lip. Get up, Landry, she said. Her voice was tired, annoyed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. You are making a mess. Dylan needs to get to the airport. My father appeared behind her. He did not even look at me. His eyes went straight to Dylan and I saw something that made my chest feel hollow. Concern. Worry. Not for me. Never for me. For Dylan. He was worried that Dylan might be upset, might be stressed, might have his important day ruined by having to step over his sister's body on his way to greatness. Is everything ready? My father asked Dylan, his hand already reaching for his son's shoulder. You have your bat, your cleats. We packed extra protein bars. I am fine, Dad Dylan said, and I heard something in his voice that I had never heard before. Satisfaction. He was satisfied. He had put me in my place, and our parents had confirmed what he already knew. That I did not matter. That my body bleeding on their expensive tile did not matter. That nothing about me would ever matter as much as his next pitch. Good, my father said. Then, without even a glance in my direction, Landry's future doesn't matter. The boy's future is what is important. Yours doesn't mean anything. The words landed like physical blows. I lay there staring up at the ceiling at the recessed lights we had installed 2 years ago, lights I had helped pay for with my paycheck, because the house needed to look perfect for when scouts came to visit. I had spent 27 years in this house, 27 years trying to earn a place at their table, and my father had just said the only true thing he had ever said to me. My future did not matter. Landry, my mother said, and now there was an edge to her voice. Get up. Stop lying there like a victim. You are making Dylan late. Don't you care about your brother's future at all? Don't you want him to succeed? I did get up. Slowly. My head throbbed and my hips screamed, and I could taste blood every time I swallowed. I stood there in my kitchen in the house I had grown up in, and I looked at the three of them. My parents flanking Dylan like bodyguards. Dylan staring at his phone, already bored with the drama he had created. None of them looking at me. None of them caring that I was hurt. None of them even remembering that I had somewhere to be something important, something that might determine whether I lived or died. Something crystallized in that moment. Something hard and sharp and cold. I felt it settle into my chest like a piece of ice felt it spread through my veins until even the pain seemed distant and unimportant. I was done. I did not say anything. I did not argue or cry or defend myself. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, my footsteps steady despite the pain. I heard my mother call after me something about not making a scene, but I did not respond. I climbed the stairs to my room, the room I had lived in since I was 5 years old, the room that still had the same lavender paint I had chosen when I was 12. I pulled my suitcase down from the closet. It was already half packed. I had been unconsciously preparing for this moment for months, maybe years, throwing extra clothes in there whenever I did laundry, tucking away important documents, keeping my passport and birth certificate in a folder that I could grab at a moment's notice. Some part of me had known this was coming. Some part of me had been counting down to this inevitable moment when I would finally have to choose between my family and my life. I chose my life. I packed frantically, methodically, grabbing clothes and toiletries and my laptop and chargers. I went to my closet and pulled out the shoebox I kept hidden behind my winter boots. Inside was $4,200 in cash money I had been saving for 2 years, $20 here, $50 there, every time I could skim a little off the top of my paycheck before it went into the shared household account that my parents controlled. I had been saving for something, though. I had never let myself articulate what. An escape fund. That was what it was. And today was the day I was going to use it. The whole process took maybe 3 minutes. When I was done, I looked around my room one last time. The lavender walls. The bookshelf filled with books no one had ever asked me about. The desk where I had done homework and written college essays and applied for jobs, all of it ignored and invisible to the people downstairs. The bed where I had cried myself to sleep more nights than I could count. I felt nothing looking at it. No nostalgia. No regret. Just a flat, empty certainty that I was never coming back. I walked downstairs. My suitcase bumped against each step, a dull rhythm that should have drawn attention but did not. In the kitchen, Dylan was eating a protein bar, my mother was straightening his collar, and my father was on his phone, probably calling his foreman to say he would be late to the construction site because he was taking his son to the airport. None of them looked up as I walked past. None of them noticed the suitcase. None of them cared. I opened the front door. I stepped out into the cold November morning. I closed the door behind me with a soft click that sounded to my ears like the ceiling of a tomb. I drove to the hospital with blood still drying on my lip and Dylan's handprint still red on my cheek. I did not cry. I did not think. I just drove following the GPS directions in the same mechanical way I had followed their orders for 27 years. Left. Right. Straight. Park. The hospital parking garage was almost empty at this hour. I found a spot near the entrance and sat there for a long moment staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The swelling had started. My left cheek was puffy and red, the mark of Dylan's palm clearly visible. My lip was split, a thin line of dried blood crusting at the corner of my mouth. I looked like exactly what I was. A victim. Someone who had been hurt and had nowhere to go. I grabbed my purse and my insurance cards and walked into UHealth Oncology with my head high and my hands steady. The waiting room was quiet and sterile, all pale blue walls and soft lighting designed to be calming. I checked in at the front desk. The receptionist looked up at my face and I saw her eyes widen slightly, saw her mouth open as if to ask a question, but I just handed her my insurance card and said, "I have an 1130 with Dr. Mitchell." "Of course," she said softly. "Have a seat. Someone will call you back shortly." I sat in a chair by the window and looked out at the parking lot. I could see my car from here, my old Honda Civic that I had bought myself when I was 22 with money from my first real job. My parents had been annoyed that I had not consulted them first, that I had not waited until they could help me find something better. But I had wanted something that was mine, something they had no claim to. Looking at it now, I felt a fierce pride. That car had carried me here. That car was going to carry me away. Landry Beckett. I stood and followed the nurse back through the maze of hallways. She was young, maybe my age, with kind eyes and a name tag that said Jennifer. She took my vitals in a small exam room, and when she put the blood pressure cuff on my arm, she paused. "Honey," she said gently, "what happened to your face?" "I fell," I said automatically. It was the lie I would have told. The lie I had been preparing. But as soon as the words left my mouth, I felt sick. I felt the ice in my chest crack just a little, felt something hot and furious pour through. "I didn't fall," I said, and my voice shook. "My brother hit me this morning because I would not drive him to the airport. Because I chose to come here instead." Jennifer's hand tightened on my arm just for a second. "I am going to get Dr. Mitchell," she said. Doctor. Sarah Mitchell was exactly what I needed in that moment. She was in her mid-40s with silver streaks in her dark hair and the kind of direct gaze that made you feel seen. She came into the exam room and closed the door behind her, and before she even looked at my chart, she looked at my face. "Tell me what happened," she said. So I did. I told her everything. I told her about Dylan and the baseball and the money and the years of being invisible. I told her about the slap and the blood and my parents stepping over me like I was garbage. I told her about the lump in my throat and the 4-month wait and the fear that had been eating me alive. I told her things I had never said out loud, things I had barely admitted to myself, and she listened to every word without interrupting, without judging, without looking away. When I was done, I was crying. Not the pretty kind of crying, but the ugly, snotty, gasping kind that comes from somewhere deep and broken. Jennifer had brought me a box of tissues, and I clutched them in my lap like a lifeline. "Doctor." Mitchell pulled off her gloves and sat down on the rolling stool across from me. "Landry," she said, and her voice was firm and clear, "you are not going back to that house. Not tonight. Not ever. You are coming home with me." "I cannot," I started to say, but she held up a hand. "Yes, you can. I have a guest room. I have a very friendly golden retriever who loves everyone. And I have a husband who is a retired police officer who will be very happy to make sure no one from your family shows up on my doorstep. You are not alone in this. Do you understand me? You are not alone anymore." I nodded, unable to speak. "Good," she said. "Now let's look at your thyroid and figure out what we are dealing with." The biopsy was quick, relatively painless, just a long needle and some pressure, and the strange sensation of someone poking around inside my neck. "Doctor." Mitchell talked me through every step, her voice steady and reassuring, and when it was done, she put a small bandage on the puncture site and squeezed my shoulder. "Results will take about a week," she said. "In the meantime, you are staying with me. We will sort out the rest." That night, I sat in Dr. Sarah Mitchell's living room with a bag of frozen corn on my cheek and a glass of red wine in my hand. Her golden retriever Bo had his head in my lap, his brown eyes full of uncomplicated love. Sarah sat across from me, her own glass of wine on the coffee table, and she said, "I need to see your insurance cards." "All of them." I handed her my wallet. She opened it and went very still. "Landry," she said slowly, "why do you have 9 credit cards with your name on them that I am certain you did not open?" My heart stopped. She spread the cards out on the coffee table. 9 of them all, different banks, all with my name embossed on the plastic. "Did you open these?" "No," I whispered. "I have never opened a credit card in my life. I could not even get approved for one. My credit score is terrible because of my student loans." Sarah's face went hard. "We need to check your credit report. Now." Through her husband's connections in law enforcement, Sarah was able to pull my full credit report within an hour. We sat side by side on her couch, staring at her laptop screen, and I felt the world tilt and slide away beneath me. Total debt, $178,412. The number was so large, so impossible that my brain could not process it at first. I stared at it, at the long string of charges, at the dates and the merchant names, and the slowly accumulating interest that was eating me alive. And then I started to see the pattern. $29,800. Platinum card. Luxury hotels in Jupiter, Fort Myers, Phoenix. All of them baseball destinations. All of them places where Dylan had tournaments. $33,100. Black card. Private coaching packages. Velocity training programs. Driveline Baseball Academy registration fees. All for Dylan. $41,200. Business visa. Charter flights. Private planes to East Cobb to Atlanta to every perfect game, showcase within 500 miles. Team dinners at steakhouses. Hotel party suites. $34,300. Two more cards. Charges to a compounding pharmacy in Sarasota, a place that Sarah immediately recognized. That is a steroid mill, she said, her voice shaking with fury. That pharmacy has been investigated by the DEA 3 times. They supply performance-enhancing drugs to youth athletes. Every single application had my social security number. Every single one had a signature that looked like mine because it was mine scanned from old permission slips and school forms and copied onto fraudulent applications. Dylan was listed as an authorized user on 4 of the cards. Your family, Sarah said, and she had to stop and take a breath because her voice was shaking so hard. Your family did not just abuse you this morning, Landry. They have been robbing you blind for years. They have been stealing your identity, destroying your credit, and buying your brother's future with your financial corpse. And they did it so systematically, so deliberately that this was not an accident. This was a plan. I sat there with the frozen corn melting in my lap and the wine untouched in my hand, and I stared at the number. $178,412. That was what my future was worth to them. That was the price they had decided to pay for Dylan's dreams, and they had paid it with my life. Something inside me that had been cracked since this morning shattered completely. I felt it go, felt the last thread of connection to the people who called themselves my family snap and disintegrate. I felt cold. So cold that even the wine and the fire in Sarah's fireplace and Beau's warm weight against my leg could not touch it. I want a lawyer, I said. My voice did not sound like my own. It sounded flat and hard and empty of everything except purpose. I want to press charges. I want them arrested. All of them. Sarah smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who had seen too much suffering and was done being polite about it. I know someone, she said. I stayed with Sarah for 2 weeks. I slept in her guest room with the door locked and my phone turned off. I helped her make dinner. I threw tennis balls for Beau until my arm hurt. I existed in a strange bubble where the outside world could not touch me, where I did not have to think about my parents or Dylan, or the house in Littleton, or the $178,000 that I would probably never be able to pay back. My phone stayed off, but Sarah's phone did not. She told me 2 days after I moved in that my mother had shown up at her house at 2 a.m, banging on the door and screaming that Sarah was harboring a runaway. Sarah's husband, a man named Tom with gray hair and the patient demeanor of someone who had dealt with a lot of terrible people in his career, had opened the door and very calmly informed my mother that I was an adult, that I was there, voluntarily, and that if she did not leave immediately, he would call the police and have her arrested for trespassing. She left. She came back 3 more times over the next week. Tom called the police on the 4th visit. She did not come back after that. On day 10, I met with Mason Brooks. Mason had been 2 years ahead of me in high school, a quiet kid who always sat in the back of the classroom and took notes in a leather journal. He had gone to law school at the University of Denver, specialized in white-collar crime and financial fraud, and was now one of the most respected criminal defense attorneys in Colorado. When Sarah called him, he cleared his schedule. We met in his office downtown, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains. I sat across from him and placed a 2-inch thick folder on his desk. It contained copies of everything. Every credit card statement, every fraudulent application, every charge to the steroid pharmacy, every receipt from every charter flight, every single piece of evidence that my family had built their empire on my financial grave. I want them in federal prison, I said. My voice was steady. My hands were steady. Everything about me was steady and cold and certain. I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I want them to lose everything the way they made me lose everything. Can you do that? Mason opened the folder. He read for 20 minutes without speaking, his expression never changing. When he finally looked up, his eyes were hard. They will get at least 10 years, he said. Your father is the primary actor here, so he will get the worst of it. Your mother is clearly complicit. And your brother, as a legal adult who benefited from the fraud and was an authorized user, can be charged as an accomplice. Good, I said. This will destroy them, Mason continued. Their reputations, their finances, everything. Your brother's baseball career is already over, but this will make sure he never plays again at any level. Your father will likely lose his contractor's license. Your mother will be a convicted felon. They will lose their house. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the kitchen floor. I thought about the blood in my mouth. I thought about my father's voice saying my future did not matter. I thought about 27 years of being invisible. Yes, I said. I am prepared. Mason picked up his phone. Then let's get started. He filed complaints with the IRS, the FBI, the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Colorado. He handed them documentation so thorough, so comprehensive that there was no possibility of denial or defense. He gave them a case they could not lose. 10 days after that meeting, I was having lunch with Sarah at a small cafe near the hospital when my phone buzzed. I had turned it back on that morning, had gotten a new number, had blocked every member of my family. But I had not blocked the news alerts. The headline made me drop my fork. Littleton contractor arrested for $178 Kelvin's identity theft scheme against biological daughter. The photo showed my father, Richard Beckett, face down on the hood of his own F-250 truck, hands cuffed behind his back, 2 FBI agents flanking him. The article detailed everything. The credit cards, the baseball expenses, the performance-enhancing drugs, the years of systematic fraud. It quoted an FBI spokesman saying this was one of the most calculated cases of familial financial abuse they had ever seen. I read it twice. Then I set my phone down and picked up my coffee and took a sip. Sarah was watching me. How do you feel? She asked. Nothing, I said honestly. I feel nothing at all. 24 hours later, my mother was arrested in the King Soopers parking lot, still holding 2 containers of vanilla whey protein powder that Dylan needed for his training. The protein powder went into evidence as part of the scheme. 3 days after that, Dylan was arrested at a public park where he was trying to throw, since every private facility had banned him for life after his steroid test came back positive. The agents seized his phone, his laptop, and his truck. They found text message chains, where he bragged to friends about his mom getting him anything he wanted by using Landry's good credit. They found receipts he had saved for tax purposes, not realizing they were evidence of his complicity. The indictment was 32 pages long. Richard Beckett, 12 felony counts, including identity theft, wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy. Cheryl Beckett, 8 counts, including conspiracy and being an accessory after the fact. Dylan Beckett, 4 counts as an accomplice and beneficiary of the fraud. Richard was denied bail. The judge called him a flight risk and a danger to his own daughter. Cheryl was granted bail but had to surrender her passport and wear an electronic ankle monitor. Dylan was placed under house arrest at my aunt's place in Aurora since our house was being seized as part of the restitution process. The trial took 4 months to reach court. By then, Dylan's doping scandal had completed its own trajectory. Perfect Game banned him permanently from all sanctioned events. Every Division I program that had offered him a scholarship pulled their offers. The MLB draft put a lifetime note on his file, banned from professional baseball at all levels globally. Do not contact. The trial lasted 3 days. I sat in the back row of the courtroom every single day wearing simple clothes and no makeup, my hair pulled back in a bun. I wanted to be invisible. I wanted to watch them fall apart without them even knowing I was there. My father tried to cry on the stand. He gave a rambling speech about wanting to give his son a chance, about how he never meant to hurt me, about how he was ashamed. He even managed to produce tears. They looked real. Maybe they were. Maybe he was genuinely sorry now that there were consequences. The judge was not impressed. Judge Patricia Thornton was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a reputation for having no patience for parental abuse. When my father finished his performance, she looked at him for a long moment. "Mr. Beckett," she said, "you did not just steal money from your daughter. You stole her future. You stole her credit. You stole her sense of safety in her own home. You did it deliberately, systematically over years to fund a baseball career that was built on illegal drugs and fraud. You are not a father. You are a thief, and you will be sentenced as one. Richard Beckett, 96 months in federal prison at FCI Englewood. No possibility of parole. Restitution of $178,412 plus interest. Cheryl Beckett, 60 months of probation, 18 months of home confinement and mandatory community service. Dylan Beckett, 2 years of probation, a diversion program, and a permanent ban from organized baseball at every level. The judge also ordered the seizure of the house in Littleton to pay part of the restitution. The house with 5 bedrooms and the batting cage and the trophy room. All of it would be auctioned off. When the sentence was read, my father collapsed. 2 bailiffs had to hold him up. My mother let out a sound that was barely human, a wail of pure despair. Dylan just stared straight ahead, his face blank, his future reduced to nothing. My mother turned, then scanning the courtroom, and her eyes found me in the back row. For just a moment we looked at each other. I saw her recognize me. I saw the exact moment she understood that I had been there all along, watching, waiting, letting the justice system do what she had never done for me. I did not smile. I did not cry. I just looked at her until she looked away. The gavel came down. It was over. 1 year later, I got the call from my endocrinologist. The lump was benign. 40 minutes of outpatient surgery, and it was gone, a simple thyroid nodule that had been growing for years but was never dangerous. I kept the pathology report in a frame on my desk at my new job. Benign thyroid nodule. No evidence of malignancy. I touched it every morning to remind myself that I was alive. With the restitution, money, and my savings, I bought a small house in Boulder, a 1,940 seconds bungalow with original hardwood floors and a backyard big enough for the dog I was planning to adopt. No batting cage. No trophy room. Just space for me. On a Saturday afternoon in late fall, I drove through Littleton. I did not plan to. I was on my way to a hiking trail and took a wrong turn, and suddenly I was on Mapler Lane, the street where I had grown up. The house had a bright red sold sign staked in the front yard. A U-Haul truck was parked in the driveway. A young couple was carrying boxes laughing about something. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, was chasing soap bubbles across the lawn, running through the space where Dylan's batting cage used to stand. The woman looked up and saw me slowing down. She smiled and waved. I lifted one hand off the steering wheel and waved back. In my rearview mirror, I watched the little girl run through the space where I used to stand in the dark counting the baseballs Dylan hit while everyone else cheered. She was laughing. She was free. She was living in a house that had been built on my stolen money and my stolen future, and she had no idea. She would grow up there and be happy and never know that the previous family had cannibalized one of their own children to prop up the other. I kept that image in my mind for exactly 1 second. Then I pressed the accelerator and merged into traffic. My hands did not shake on the wheel. They lost everything. The house. The reputation. The golden child. Each other. My father sits in a federal prison cell, sharing space with men who stole far less and hurt far fewer people. My mother lives in a subsidized apartment, her days measured by the beeping of her ankle monitor. Dylan works at a sporting goods store selling baseball equipment to kids with dreams he will never have again. And me, I got a life that is 100% mine. When the mountains appeared in front of me and the old neighborhood vanished behind me, I smiled for the first time in years without checking to see if anyone was watching. Because here is what I learned: family is not an excuse for abuse. Love is not supposed to hurt. And you do not owe loyalty to people who would destroy you to save themselves. So let me ask you this. If you were in my position, if you discovered that your family had stolen your entire future to fund someone else's dream, what would you have done? Would you have walked away quietly? Would you have forgiven them? Or would you have done what I did and burned it all down? Drop a comment and tell me your story. Hit that like button if you believe in justice. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about people who chose themselves over the people who hurt them. Because I promise you, mine is not the only story like this. And if you are living it right now, if you are the invisible one in your family, I need you to know something. Your future matters. Your life matters. And you do not have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm.